Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Finance for Monday, April 16th, 2018 to order. Before we get on to public forum, I just wanted to add a item to the agenda. I'd like to entertain a motion actually to add an item, we'll call it 9A, to consider and take possible action on request from the Board of Selectmen with regard to capital plan purchases.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And now we will get on with the agenda. Item number 1, public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board? Seeing and hearing none. Item 2, approve minutes of March 12th, 2018. These are the budget workshop minutes. Actually, do I hear a motion to approve them?
So
Second.
Discussion, corrections? Nothing? We're all good? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry. We have 4 ayes. I'm going to abstain on these minutes. Thank you, Ken, again for reading my comments into the record. And I'm sure there's no one opposed here. So, meeting minutes for Monday, March 19th. These are our regular meeting minutes. Do we hear a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
And any corrections?
I have one.
Yep. Go ahead.
On the bottom of page 3,
Right.
paragraph number 4,
Okay.
under revenues, it says Ms. Malavasi noted that town clerk is a little lower than last year. However, they really are on target because they adjusted the budget for this. I think it should be this year, or not
Right.
yet.
I know there were a couple of questions the board had, and they were answered. I double-checked that, so those are all good. The only thing I would add is on committee reports number 8, we did just very briefly went over the building permit report. But that was the only item I saw. Okay, all in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, all set. Correspondence, 3.1, Standing Building Committee. Because I was meeting the night of the town meeting, I was not able to attend. I'm going to pretty much just entertain any questions or any comments that we have regarding the Standing Building Committee. These are of April 3rd, so these were able to get to us in fairly short order this time, so we're within the same month. Yes, Ken.
I had a couple of questions, but the first one, excuse me, the first one on page 1, item 5, there seems to be a $33,000 disparity on the elevator and fire alarm upgrades, and I wondered if you could ask them why there was such a wide variance.
Well, regarding wide variances, I think that's something that they were going to look into regarding the range. It's not uncommon in this climate right now that you're going to get bidders that are very low and some that are high based on how hungry they are for work. So I'm not incredibly surprised by that right now. I do know that one of the items, the item that we added to the agenda regarding possible action with the capital plan purchases, the town hall elevator and fire alarm upgrades, that was awarded, and I think we're going to be approving that later on. We will be on the agenda.
Right, a little further, Mr. Chairman, a little further in that paragraph, first paragraph, they brought it in under $100,000, which means prevailing wage does not apply, and that significantly reduces the labor costs associated with a project of that size.
So, okay, do we want to discuss it now, I guess, or?
Well, we just wanted to, Ken asked the question,
Right.
Why the discrepancy?
Keep it right under 100.
Under 100, yeah.
And there were no issues with the checking into the numbers, or that they're holding that number?
No, you're right. And again, a little later on the agenda, you have that item, but
Right.
They checked references. Standing Building Committee is comfortable with that vendor at that price.
And you're not anticipating any change orders or anything like that? No. Great.
And if they are, according to the standing building, then they are required to pay the prevailing wage, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's still safe.
Right. Well, that takes care of, we don't have to ask that question now later on, we just took care of that. Okay, Ken?
Yeah, on page, excuse me, there's a frog that's in my throat. Items 6 and 7 refer to the upcoming meeting, upcoming estimates for standing building
Bless you.
on the community center roof replacement and the turf field. They were going to have some determination on April 6th, and I wondered if they had made such a determination and where those two projects stand right now.
Well, I can answer the community center roof replacement. I know the turf field, I actually don't know what became of that, but maybe there was an update. But on the community center roof, that meeting did happen, and I will keep it short and tell you that the building committee had some further questions, I guess, in their special meeting that happened on the 12th, on Thursday. And so that project, or at least the approval of that award contract, of the contract, is delayed. So they're having a special meeting, I believe, is it this week they're going to have another one? Or next week?
Tomorrow they're having another one.
They're having another tomorrow.
The Board of Selectmen tabled this. We had an item on our agenda this morning to act on the award of this bid that was tabled as a result of the concerns raised by the Standing Building Committee, and they hope to get that ironed out within the next couple of days, at which point the Board of Selectmen may hold a special meeting to approve the award of that bid, which means we may be looking for you folks to have a special meeting as well, so
Okay.
be forewarned.
Thank you very much for forewarning us.
And they would have,
Okay, and then on the, oh, I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
they would come up with some determination on the turf field.
Yeah, do we,
Did that,
I'm not quite sure
any
what
progress
this.
on that?
Yes, we have entered into an agreement with a consulting organization to represent our interests. There are 5 distinct entities involved in either the design, the manufacture of the materials, or the installation of that field. The Board of Selectmen felt that it would most likely not be in any of their best interests to determine that it was their fault, their particular fault. So we've engaged Malone McBroom, an engineering, it's Malone, isn't it? Malone McBroom.
Casel?
In Castle Booths, right?
I'm sorry,
Castle
Castle
Booth,
Booth. Castle Booth. Malone McBroom was one of the bidders. Castle Booths, the initial cost of $40,000 to conduct the research. I participated in a meeting 2 Fridays ago with the 5 parties, as well as Paul Schmidt from Standing Building, Rick Maynard, and then our town attorney, as we went through preliminary discussions to try to determine that most people's best guesstimate as to what the problem was. There was a questionnaire that was submitted by Castle Booths to the 5 consultants, 5 entities involved in the field. Those responses were due back this past Friday. We are scheduled for another sit-down meeting on this Friday, the Friday the 27th, I believe it is, where Castle Booths will make a preliminary recommendation. There is also testing of the various materials that is taking place to try to replicate the field conditions. Field's a wrong word, but the environmental conditions that happen. At this point, nothing further than it's well under progress. The field is not playable. We have determined that trying to identify a quick fix just to make it accessible for later this spring. Was not going to happen in a time frame that would make a significant impact on the sports programs. And secondly, given that we're not sure what's underneath some of the rest of the carpet, whether or not there are other defects that could cause potential liability concerns to the town if we allowed people to play on the field.
So, comment and question. The comment being that I believe I read, I know that there was some discussion about the the consultants were saying something about the uniqueness, that they had never seen this happen before, or there was some comment about it over the last few weeks, and recently, it turns out that this has occurred at other fields
Correct.
like
There-
this.
there are a
and
couple
so
of-
now that plays into this as well, that it's maybe not just unique conditions that we have, it's an issue with the installation or something that's a common threat.
Right. There are some commonalities with other experiences at other fields in the state of Connecticut with virtually the same materials, same design, same materials. There may be some fluctuations. There are also some cases throughout New England, and what I understand is there may be cases out in the Midwest as well. And at this point, we can't pinpoint, we're not ready to pinpoint exactly what the cause
I
is.
guess the pro to this is that it's happened before.
It has
If
happened.
it's happened before, then it means that there must be a fix. If this has never happened before, and it was only in Guilford, then that would be an issue.
Right.
That there's never, it's never been seen. It has been seen, so hopefully there'll be a fix to it. The question I do have, though, it's come up in the community, and it's a question that I've gotten directly, is the consultant cost, who bears that? Now, this field is under warranty, so this consultant cost of $40,000 right now. I mean, we bear that, but that is expected to be, I would assume, to be reimbursed based on whatever happens with the solution. We get that money back.
Counselor, you've answered your own question.
All right.
That
I want
is
to get
the-
it on record because I know it's been a bit of a question.
That is
Why are we paying a
that is
consultant?
our anticipation, that
Right.
any costs incurred on our part that would be recoverable if in fact we can identify the cause and the responsible party.
Right. Great.
There's also a jurisdictional issue that was raised by Mr. Orenstein as to whether the SBC should be involved in it, or whether the entire issue should be overseen by the Board of Education and the Standing Fields Committee.
It is currently
Right.
in the hands of Standing Field Committee and
So are they out of the picture
and our
then?
town attorney.
Yeah.
Because the Standing Building Committee is not in a position to make a determination as to the cause of this particular problem.
So it's Standing Fields and,
Yeah.
Standing Fields,
And the
but
Board
it's
of Ed.
primarily with, at this point, the town attorney and our consultant, Castle Booze.
I was wondering when that was going to happen, so it happened. Because Standing Field should really be taking jurisdiction of this.
Absolutely. And Park and Rec is an equally important player in this process.
Right. Anything else on building committee?
yeah.
One other follow-up on the fields. Those other incidences where it's happened, any idea, are they comparable in time, or did it all just happen, did something happen a few years ago, so we have a sense as to what steps have been taken, or are these all relatively new fields?
The commonality has to do with exactly where on the field the separation took place. The commonality also happens to do with the timing related to weather conditions.
Okay.
It appears as if these dramatic shifts in temperature and in condensation play into it. Heavy rains, flash freezing, some melting, heavy freezing, causing these issues, and that seems to be a commonality with these fields.
Okay, thanks.
Interestingly enough, the two of the other fields have also come apart somewhere around the 27-yard line on both sides of the fields, as we experienced as well.
Thanks.
Ken, you have
Actually, 27.5-yard line.
I had just one reassurance, maybe, on item 10 on the Melissa Jones roof, that it's behind schedule, and I just wondered if if the parties involved are confident that the job will be completed in the summer and not affect the reopening of school in September.
According to the committee, yes, they're confident. They stated that, so. I think the important thing is when they start the roof project, when they start the actual work. As long as they're starting it, the paperwork I don't think is going to affect it. It's more that what they'll do is just expedite either the paperwork or the
That's not a
process
problem.
of mobilization. Anything further? Building committee. Okay. Pension committee. Actually had again, I think I have a question and a comment. The question is also something that's come up in the last couple of weeks as a question to me. And it had to do with the number of employees that are in the defined contribution versus defined benefits. It doesn't have to be an exact number, but I know that we're shifting over to defined contribution. And it states here there are now about 30 people in the town employee defined contribution plan. And then there's separate reports. And I'm just wondering, is there a way of getting either a number or a percentage of course, we're moving to defined contribution, but what the percentages that are on defined contribution now?
We can certainly forward you a copy of the reports that the pension
I
committee
think it would be good
receives.
just for background information when one of us is asked about, well, you know, how many are still on defined benefit? And
Well,
are we moving? We're moving in the right direction. That's the easy answer. The tough one is, well, what percentage are we still way behind?
Correct.
You can always ask them to call HR as well.
The,
because they're-
Right.
the monthly pension committee meeting is Wednesday morning. Anyone who's interested in getting a hand copy of that report is certainly welcome to attend at 8 o'clock at the Selectmen's Wing.
Thank you for the
However, in lieu of your attendance, we will send out that specific report that Mitch Goldblatt puts together on a monthly basis.
That would be great. Really appreciate it.
How often would you like that report?
How often?
Yeah.
I just a one time for right now, just so we can get a snapshot. I don't think it has to be anything regular, just a snapshot.
It changes very little.
Right,
from-
that's what I figured, so. The other comment, or the comment that I have is under new business. And I know, I'm sure that all of us, including a couple of members of the board who are not here, had a bit of a question regarding the discussions that were going on, ultimately regarding the contributions from the Board of Ed to the pension fund. I wanted to at least raise the issue because one of the comments here was about the Board of Finance looking to allocate monies for the pension to offset the shortfall currently that we know with the Board of Ed. So I just wanted to raise that, and at this point there's going to be no action on that. So,
Correct.
okay.
It was more an opportunity to expand the discussion to include the pension committee. Is obviously discussions that we've had between the various boards over the past several months in terms of using unassigned fund balance for a variety of purposes. And I just felt it was best to socialize it with the pension committee as well.
I thought it was a good thing to do, and I was just reading the minutes, and I know as soon as something includes the Board of Finance, our eyes and ears
Your
perk
antenna
up.
goes up?
And so I just wanted to make sure it was clear that, and this is a discussion we've been talking about this for a long time about the where the Board of Ed and where the town stands on the pension.
Correct.
So, but no action is going to be taken tonight or in the
Foreseeable
immediate or near future. So, anything else on the pension committee?
The only thing I had was there a sense from the pension committee that they're going to be studying this further and making a recommendation, or are they just kind of letting it set aside for a while?
And sort of set it aside for a little while. They're not terrifically enamored with the idea.
Okay.
Using fund balance to make up shortfalls. I think the last line is they would look for full funding in each budget cycle. But clearly, it would be our prerogative. When I say ours, it would be this board's prerogative to make those kind of changes or recommendations.
Thanks.
We had a lot of discussions around this table regarding investment in treasury bonds. And I noticed, I think there should be some comment on this, on 5.3, on the fixed income manager Hillswick, the investment in Hillswick was questioned, and there is some, I think one of the members of the board, pension board, wondered whether we were too heavily invested in treasury bonds, saying that it was dangerous, and I didn't see any reaction to that at all, and I wondered whether they're considering some movement, because That's a large percentage of fixed income.
That's the 78% figure
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Mr. Roach is coming.
When it comes to numbers like that, I
Hillswick is a traditional fixed income player, so you look for various types of investment companies, fixed incomes versus other types of vehicles. So Hillswick is heavily weighted in bonds in the fixed income category. That's all that is. That's not 78% of our entire investment portfolio is not in bonds. That is 78%
78% of Hillsborough.
of Hillswick, of their portfolio.
But still, that was questioned by the board.
Right, as they normally do.
I
The
don't,
minutes reflect that they're going to continue this discussion at their next meeting.
Meeting, right.
That they're not done with it.
Can we just go back to 5.5 for a second, to the pension?
oh yeah, go ahead.
Mary Jane, for the record, would you be willing to just talk about the impact, the long-term impact that that might have if there is no action for a long period of time?
I'm really not prepared to give that tonight.
Okay.
There was discussion that might be, that would be possibly in the future, but not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it might keep the board then constantly behind on their.
Well, correct.
Yeah.
If they're only going to, if they don't meet their ARC each year, then it continually.
The arc gets bigger each year thereafter.
Mhm. It's just harder to catch up.
Yeah.
But to discuss the numbers, I don't have that.
Okay.
Actually, the comment was the pension committee needs to look and see where that path takes us. Sorry, and that was your request of them.
That's what they're there for.
Anything else on pension? I know we got the report for the month, and I know it was stated in here that February was not a great month, but January was, so we'll see how March is.
Yeah. What we call marketplace.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how it pans out. Anything else on pension? Under correspondence, I just want to mention Guilford Town Vehicle List. That was sent out to everyone on March 23rd. Just want to make sure everyone received it. Okay. I know that was on one of our members' requests, so thank you. With that, we'll move on. Item number 4, review and accept report of expenditures for the Board of Education for April 2017. 2018. Fooled me. You got me on that one. I was like, wait a minute, is it 17, 18? Hey, I review these agendas before they go out, so, you know, I totally missed that one. I thought it was 17.
Me too, I was counting, you know.
Chairman Bloss, Linda, welcome.
So we're just to kind of turn to the summary first and then go into the details. We're in good shape with the budget now with about 2.5 months left in the fiscal year. We believe that we will be once again within the appropriated amounts and not seek any kind of supplemental appropriations. We think there may be a small unexpended amount, a relatively small, given the size of the total budget, and we've already talked on our board about putting, rather than returning that to the town and put into undesignated fund balance, that we would put that into the pension fund. And I can talk a little bit about the pension fund, by the way. I can't talk a lot about it, but I can talk some about it, because we have been talking about it, and I think we do have a plan for it. The expenditures for the month of March were $6,426,239, largely payroll, of course. There were warrants in a little over $2.5 million that are listed on your expense sheet or your spreadsheet that are attached. I think just there are a couple of kind of thematic or subject matter numbers to just draw your attention to. 2017-18 has been a difficult year for special education outplacements, difficult from a financial point of view. It seems like every time we're here, we talk about this. I'm going to just remind everybody that there is very little that we can do about it, other than what we have done in terms of trying to create better in-house programs that in fact has resulted in substantially fewer outplacements than we would have had we not done these in-house programs. There are some aspects of law that we were hopeful were going to get amended in the legislature that doesn't look like they're going to. The law still allows a parent to outplace a child unilaterally and then put the burden on the Board of Ed to prove that the child could be educated just as well in-house. That law has not been amended, which is very difficult because we're trying to prove a negative, obviously. And then you've got the experience with the unilaterally outplaced student that, not surprisingly, the treaters there, the educators in that facility often have nothing but glowing things to say about how their facility is doing. And it may be, in fact, doing well. But we've lost the opportunity to even try.
Just a question on that. Is the higher cost of tuition, is that fueled by increases in private tuition in the providers, or is it fueled by an increase in the number of students?
I'm not sure I could really comment on how the private placements and not all private. There are some public outplacement facilities. I think I could just say it's driven by supply and demand. There are some extremely expensive facilities now, and they're not expensive because they want to be. They are expensive because the services that they're providing are very specialized services to some very high needs kids, and that's the law. And we comply with the law and we support the law. The issue of the unilateral outplacements is I think something that really is a little hard to explain. In my world, you don't have to prove a negative. The person who is trying to get the benefit has to, or the service has to prove why the service should be done in a particular way. We're in a position, because of the way the legislature is defined our what we have to prove in that situation, that we're trying to prove a negative. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, but there has been no interest at all in amending that statute. So it's too bad.
Can I follow up with a question? Along those same lines, in your minutes at the Operations Committee, it said the state has also placed a cap on the tuition rate. So does that mean, in minutes, does that mean that the state is telling you how much money they're going to get for tuition? So theoretically, can the Board of Education then not necessarily go out with vendors that are on the high end of the scale or exceed the cap?
So I think, without seeing the minutes, the complete set of minutes, is the discussion about the excess cost grant, and that there's going to be a cap on the excess cost grant?
It just was March the 12th, item number 7, received tuition reports. Mrs. Trudeau stated that one residential outplacement has been removed. The excess cost grant came at 74.5%. The ECG was budgeted at 70%. However, the base rate for each student has been reduced. The state has also placed a cap on the tuition rate. The tuition report was further discussed.
So for one location, the state capped us for our expenses. So they really were covering just the tuition rate for one student and not the additional services that the student was receiving.
Okay.
So where we had expenses that were upwards over $500,000, the state was capping us for just the tuition, and not covering the balance of it. Actually, it was the tuition and the residential piece and not the additional services.
Okay.
So they do have set rates for facilities that would be the max that the state would allow. And most of the time, that's what the schools do charge. This one just happens to be a very special case.
Thank you.
So in any event, that tuition line is something that we're going to keep an eye on. We think we're still okay for next year for budgeting purposes, but who knows? We thought we were okay this year for budgeting purposes, and some children moved into town. and there were some, and I'll actually talk about one of the expenses that we've had for something when I'm going through the warrants. But the other that you may have noticed is electricity is way down this from budgeted amounts, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that there was actually a rate reduction that we benefited from in December, I believe, and now we're starting to get the bills from that rate reduction. And then also, the high school is proving to be, if not more efficient, at least as efficient as we thought it was going to be, notwithstanding the fact that it has a lot more things that use electricity. You know, the old high school didn't use a lot of electricity because it didn't have air handling, for example. When your only air handling is opening a window, that's not going to use a lot of electricity. Now, there's lots of electricity now in that building, but it's pretty efficient. And so we're finding out that our usage is actually quite reasonable compared with what we had budgeted. So we're optimistic about that, and we're hoping that's going to carry forward, again, depending on what happens with rates. I do have some specific comments on some of the warrants, and obviously would be able to ask any, or hopefully be able to answer any questions. Yes?
Question before you go to the warrants. I noticed on site improvements, you're virtually fully funded for the year, 75% of the year. And I wonder whether that's going up or you've finished all the projects, basically.
So Mr. Gurnham can always find more ways to do site improvement work.
The priority items have been taken care of.
I think so. There are a couple of things that have popped up that we may need to take care of before the end of the year. If we don't take care of them before the end of the year, well, then they'll be in next year's budget. But, the site improvement line, that's one of those lines that it can always be, there are always worthy projects to be done in terms of maintenance and in terms of this is where we get in trouble with buildings, is not investing, not doing upkeep, not doing painting, not doing carpet replacement, not doing the kinds of repairs that we think are important to keep these older buildings fully functional. So I think we're okay on that line. I can't tell you what specifically might be in Mr. Gurnham's mind in terms of moving forward, but we'll see. Just on some of the specific warrants, you'll notice that there are quite a few, as usual, relating to special ed, both tuition and contracted services. There is a series of warrants to KERMA, one of our insurers, for both a workers' comp insurance premium and also an audit. That is something that we have to do every year so that they make sure that we are being charged the right amount. This is the one I wanted to mention. You'll see that there's a check to the East Haven Board of Education, and you may be wondering what that would be about. That's for about $8,800. There is a federal law that says that when a child who is being educated in one district is outplaced from that child's house by DCF or whatever the relevant agency is for that particular state to live in, say, Guilford, that Guilford has to split with the sending town the cost of transporting that child back to the sending town. It's called the McKinney-Vento Act. It's a federal law. So that in that situation, a child was outplaced was placed by an agency in Guilford. Under federal law, we are obligated to pay half of the transportation cost to that child going back to Decatur. Nothing we can do about that. Yeah, I mean it's standard. What's that? Yes. Well, there's not very often. No, it's really just in the case of DCF placement or something along those lines. Yeah. And it's frankly, you might say, well, why doesn't the child just go to school in Guilford, right? And there's room at the inn, but the child may not want to go to school in Guilford because his friends are her friends are in East Haven, and maybe going back to East Haven in 90 days or 120 days, whatever it happens to be. So maybe a very temporary thing. So you'll notice that there was some work done on our bus yard fuel tank. The good news is it's not a problem. It's just regular routine inspection, maintenance, and so anytime there's something to do with in-ground fuel tanks, I get a little nervous, but there's nothing to worry about. You'll see also there's a large check to Life Skills of South Florida. You may wonder what that is. Maybe, am I anticipating your questions? So that is another unilateral outplacement for a special education student. It ended, though, and is not going to furnish any further expense. But that was not something that the Board of Education probably would have done on its own. But that was something that was tried. There is a warrant for physical therapy and sports medicine. That's a 3 times a year. This is for the athletic trainer for the high school and Adams. Students who are competitive athletes on the varsity teams are able to go to the trainer. I think they have an office across from the police station in one of those buildings. But that is a flat fee for one for each of the 3 seasons.
Is that more like along the lines of continuing education for the trainers?
No, it's really treatment for the athletes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We don't have a trainer on staff. We don't have anybody that's a trainer. We contract out.
I see.
And that way it allows us continuing coverage if that person's out and they do cover all the games. And
How long has that been the case?
As long as I've been around.
Yeah. A long time.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. I tend to remember in high school there was a trainer in, oh.
I think
We had,
I think the good news is since
Maybe we didn't
since
have
we
one
were in
episode.
high school, the whole concept of athletic training has become a bit more scientific
little
than
different.
it
Yeah.
was back.
fewer
in,
lawsuits.
Ice bag,
Yeah.
ice bandage.
Ice and
Yeah.
aspirin.
Yeah, that's-
Question. And I go way back to where we had about $1 million to spend on a high school roof. And I noticed here that at the new high school, we incurred a $557 bill for
Yeah,
the
I
roof.
didn't
Do
ask
you know
Mr. Gurnham about that. I think I did
what
ask
that
maybe
was?
6 or 7 months ago. I think it was just to plug a little, like a flaw in the liner from somebody either dropping something on it or somebody stepping on it the
Usually
wrong
it's
way.
literally a repair, like something got dropped
Yeah.
on it. It's not an issue with the construction, it's an issue with something happening up
I
there.
questioned that a couple months ago, and that there
That's
was
what it
some
was.
kind of repair that was not related
It's
to the warranty.
First year.
The
Yeah.
one thing I think we can say with some level of certainty is that if it's $500, it's probably not a big fix.
Not a big
Right.
deal, but
No, I mean, look. you know,
But amazing what a little
those of
nail
us who
hole will
remembered
do.
$1 million.
You gotta fix that, or else it'll be all over.
I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill, are you still?
Well, I was just going to comment on one other warrant, the Unite Here Health. That is our cafeteria workers. They are not in the Town of Guilford Health Plan. Rather, the benefit package is basically the same, but they're bought into a union-sponsored health plan. So 6 out of the 7 of our bargaining units are in the Guilford plan. The 7th is in the Unite Here plan, and it's been fine for us. It's been financially really the same as if they were in the Guilford plan. So those are the only comments I had on any of the warrants, and so any questions about that, I'd be happy to
I had a question on your minutes and the update on school safety, which is very interesting to review, and apparently it seemed to be a pretty comprehensive review, and I wondered whether the board is contemplating any further updates, or whether we're comfortable with the level of facilities that we have for school safety.
So I think and I should say, one of the warrants in here is a $20,000 payment to the town of Guilford for our share of the school resource officer. We work, our relationship right now with Chief Hutchison, between Dr. Freeman and Chief Hutchison, is extraordinarily productive. And we are doing basically what the police think we should be doing. Each of the buildings now has a level of external security that we've never had before, notwithstanding the fact that 6 of the 7 buildings were designed in a time when security was just not looked at the way it is today. So each of our buildings now has intercom systems. Each of our buildings has an entrance that can only go through the office. We had to do a lot of work to do that, but it was done and it was worth it. The resource officer spends a lot of time at the high school, but she also spends a lot of time at the other schools. And in fact, you might have, I'm not sure it was in our minutes, might have been. But you probably saw an email. There was a suspicious person at Lakes Elementary School. As it turned out, it was completely innocent. However, everybody reacted exactly the way we would hope that they would react in that circumstance. A parent called in a suspicious person, somebody who didn't look like he belonged in the parking lot. And in fact, he didn't belong in the parking lot, but he wasn't a threat. So our resource officer, Officer Shove, just happened to be at Lakes at the time, and so she was able to kind of organize the investigation, and within not long at all figured out what the issue was. But the police responded to that very, very professionally. We think that we obviously we live in different times than we used to on the school security issue, but we have, in building building the high school and in renovating and fixing the entrances to the other 6 schools, and training staff, and I'm not going to go into great detail about what we're doing in terms of training staff because I'm just not sure that's appropriate at a public meeting, but we are confident that we are taking reasonable steps to make sure that staff is trained, the students are aware, and the buildings are reasonably secure in terms of their entrances.
Okay. Anything else on warrants? I had actually one. Did you?
Not on a warrant, but I had a question on one of the minutes.
Let me do the warrants and then
Yep.
we'll go. It was just, so on page 12, there's a couple of repair defects. It's for Dell Chromebook repairs. So I had a couple of questions embedded in this. It's not for huge amounts. They're about $100. And I'm wondering, is it for one Chromebook repair or is it several that they do when it's sent? And is that an average amount? Because I could have looked back at a lot of warrants, but I'm wondering, what is an amount that we spend kind of an average for Chromebook repairs? I mean, we talked a lot about the Chromebooks and the investment we make in that. But when you have to repair them, is that an average amount? It's not very much, but maybe this is a outlier and usually it's more, sometimes I don't know.
No, usually it's around there a little bit less,
Yeah.
and actually we don't pay for the repairs. This is a pass-through of the parent's expense.
Okay.
So we get an estimate from the company on what it's going to cost to repair it. The parent pays us the check
Okay.
to repair the Chromebook, and we pay the company.
Okay.
We've had a couple incidences where we've gotten the payment back from the insurance company on a laptop, the Chromebook that couldn't be repaired. But the repairs are not, that actually sounds a little bit higher of one than we normally have.
Repairs could be, it dropped, right? And repairs could be, there's something internally that's wrong with the...
If you spilled soda on it, it could be the drop,
Right,
it could be any number of
Right,
issues.
so I was just wondering what the level of repair is at times. And that, it seems, and it does say quote there, so that's the quote that you give to the parent.
Right.
Then the parent takes care of the $100 whatever the charge is. Okay. Thanks. Jeff, did you? Good.
There was an item on the operations committee meeting about Calvin Leeds starting to have septic problems.
Yeah, I was going to ask that same question.
So
It's old. Look, it's old.
it is an old system. There's no question.
It's an old system, and we've got old systems at 6 other schools or 5 other schools. I think we did talk a little bit about it. Mr. Gurnham is in the midst of investigating whether it's a manageable, not so big problem, a moderately sized, a little trickier problem, or a big problem. And I don't think we're there yet in terms of testing. We are pumping the septic out much more regularly than we would if the leaching field was fully functional. But I think by next meeting I'll have an answer for you. We'll see.
Great. Thank you.
We're aware of the problem and working really hard to try to solve it.
What's the community dinner?
Community dinner is something that our food service director has put together to just invite members of the community to the high school to share a dinner and just fellowship and see how the building works and see how the food services operation works. And it's been I think we've had 2 or 3 now,
We've
I think.
had 2.
Yeah. And
Actually, the third one was,
there was just one last week.
last week. So
March
the third one-
22nd.
Yeah.
It got changed because of the March snow.
Oh, right.
So it was actually last week. And so the third one was held last week. And it's usually done in conjunction with like the before and after school program or sun catchers and
Usually like a charity that it benefits from it.
And it's been very well attended, very successful. And let me take the opportunity here to talk about, our food service program is doing very well right now. I don't know if you looked in one of our neighboring towns to the west is in a little bit of a turmoil with their food service program right now. We don't have those problems or issues. We are in-house. Our food service workers work for us. They report to us. The program financially is doing much better than it was, and I think from the point of view of the consuming public, it feels like the quality is improving. So we think we're in pretty good shape in terms of the food service. It's a positive. It's been a positive program and is moving in the right direction.
Great. I know it wasn't too long ago we were talking about certain struggles that we're having with it, and it's doing much better now. So
well, right. Yeah, and I think we had talked about maybe contracting, and privatizing, and I think the Board of Ed is pretty glad we didn't, frankly, given where we are right now.
Yeah.
So. Do you want me to just mention about the pension issues, or do you want to save that for some other day, or? Because it's not that complicated.
Why not?
So I'll tell you why not. Because it's not. Yeah. We did get a report from Milliman talking about, and I'm referring to this report, the actuarial report that Milliman did for us at the end of the last fiscal year. So now we're 9 months. This is 9 months old, but that's the most current data that we have. One of the questions I think you asked, how many people are in our plan? This is not for teachers and not for administrators. They are all under a state of Connecticut plan that is funded to about 40%, I think, of their estimated.
So it's not in good shape.
No. So this is for like
non-certified.
secretaries, right? Non-certified staff, secretaries, nurses, food service custodians. So there are 121 active members. Mm-hmm. There are 19 members who do not work for Guilford any longer, but worked long enough to vest. The program, you have to work 10 years to vest. And so it's not an easy program by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. And then there are 54 people who are retired. So the 19 who vested probably didn't vest at a very high number because it depends in part on years of service. So we've got roughly 194 people that are participants in the plan at the end of July 2017, which is 9 fewer than we had in 2016, interestingly enough. According to Milliman, we are over 81% funded. Now, that doesn't mean, the most of the recommendations will be to fund it at 90% or higher. We're not in bad shape. And I think the state of Connecticut would trade places with us anytime, as would most municipal pension plans. What we need to do is we have an unfunded accrued liability of about $2.9 million. We have 13 years to make that up until we believe that this plan is going to sunset because everybody in the plan will have retired. So we do have a few different plans on how to deal with that. One is this year we did make a contribution in excess of the annual fund of the maintenance cost, and assuming there's a surplus, we are going to use that. The question I think that we have been batting around is not really using general fund balance for this. That's not our money. That's the town's money, and we wouldn't want to. It's possible to use that, but it's arguably not a great idea. And we certainly don't want to get in a situation we were in a few years back where we were using fund balance for just regular budget items. But we have done very well on the health insurance side of the budget, and that's not an accident. That's taken some cooperation both from our employees, both certified and non-certified, and also in terms of the contractual provisions, and also are moving toward the high deductible health plans with HSAs. That has made a major difference in our experience. And so we do have some accumulated reserve in that, probably more than is necessary. And it's taxpayer money, and so we need to use it for something that would work to benefit taxpayers. And so I think we're going to have a discussion about this, and we'll obviously include your board or the Board of Selectmen or whoever we need to include. But it's not bad. It's manageable, and we have a plan to manage it. So I think one of the things we were thinking about trying to time it with is putting aside the medical reserve for a moment. But the bonding for the debt service for the high school is going to start to drop in a year or two. There's going to be some flexibility there. And so we've been trying to be very careful until the debt service starts to decline for the high school about trying to make up some of these items. And I think that's just good planning. But anyway, I am not close to thinking that this is a major problem.
Okay. I think just when the Board of Finance, as I said before, when the Board of Finance is mentioned in the pension committee, wow, you kind of feel like you have to address it, but there was a lot of discussion about that, and I know that there were members that were, just concerned about the discussion and how it took place, and I think that you answering this and talking about it definitely makes a difference. And,
well, it's very much on our radar. This is not.
Oh, it's been on all of our. I mean, this didn't just pop up in the last couple months. I mean,
no.
This has been ongoing. We've been talking about it, and it's.
I think there may be a misunderstanding. And again, I haven't seen the pension committee minutes. I've talked to somebody who saw them, and I'm not on the pension committee email list for some reason. I think there may be a misunderstanding as to what the medical account is. It is not an undesignated fund balance. It is payments that were made under the projections that Anthem Blue Cross gave to the town and to the Board of Ed that wound up not being, that were higher. The projections were higher than our experience was. Now, there has been times in our past where the projections were lower than our experience, and we wound up running a deficit in that. But that was a long time ago, and that was before we went to the high deductible HSAs. Or high deductible health plans with HSAs. So we're in a different time on that whole area right now. And I think that we need to figure out a way to responsibly address the pension issue, but not in a way that is going to, and to use the medical account in a way that is not irresponsible by using it toward recurring operational expenses. That's not wise.
I believe we're mostly all in agreement on that. So, and I think having as the minutes did state, having a plan, and you just stated that there's been a lot of talk about it, and there is a plan that's going to be put in place, and whether it's in a couple of years where the debt service starts to roll off and start making up there, I think it's being thought about all the time. It's not just something that's just come up. So,
but with the is the forecast that the gap is the 81% going to remain constant, or
so as long as we are is at the rate that we paid? Well, there's a little bit of a complicated answer, because no matter what we pay, the gap may get narrower or greater depending on returns. Right? And there are some funny actuarial assumptions that Milliman made in their evaluation. They assumed a 2.75% annual salary increase, and that hasn't been our experience. And so, I'd like to ask them about that. I'd like to ask the pension committee about that. But it's okay. It's a conservative number. I understand. I think I understand why Milliman did that. But if we make the gap, it's not going to become more unfunded. But what it would mean is that we would have 12 years instead of 13 to make up that. If all other things are equal, it would just shorten the amount of time. So I guess it depends on how you look at it in terms of what the answer would be. The number that you would need to pay annually to close the gap would increase, but the gap itself would not increase. But I think we're committed to, this is not, we're not going to be sitting here in 12 years saying we need $2 million to
Right.
fund the pension. It's not going to happen.
And just to circle back to your initial comments, we don't want to end up with a situation like the state has with regard to its pension, which I don't think is going to be, I don't think is the case, but that's obviously the concern.
I think it would be physically impossible, frankly. If we were to take
cut it in half.
No, I don't
think that's happening.
No, it's not happening. But no, I mean, if the worst case scenario is let's not do anything for 11 years, and then in year 12 we need a $2 million appropriation for that. Well, okay, well that's crazy. That's not going to happen.
Right.
And so we can argue, I mean, maybe what the Board of Ed should have been doing instead of putting money back into the general fund as we've done for the last several years, maybe we should have put it into pension. It's fine. It's good for it to be in general fund. It works the same way. It's fine. It's what we didn't do was just go out and buy stuff to get it off our books, and that would have been irresponsible. So
The issue is being monitored.
it is being monitored,
And it's being, and
will
how it
be,
gets addressed, it will be addressed in the future.
it will be addressed.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Anything else for Bill or Linda? Okay. If not, do I hear a motion to accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education
So
for
moved.
April 2018 for $6,426,239.98?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay. Item 5. Review and approve expenditures for the town government for April 2018. Mary Jane, welcome. Shall we assume revenue? Revenue first.
Yes, if you have your iPads and refresh your downloads, you'll get a new revenue report. The percentages in the 2017 year were incorrect, so if you'd like to pass these around, you can have a hard copy.
Well, how about that?
She changed this?
Yeah, it's weird. Matches the screen. Wonder of technology.
So we are 75% through our fiscal year already, and 98% collected at this point. I do want to mention that we have a couple of departments that we've been speaking about over the past few months, specifically the fire department and the police that are coming in under where they should be, and I am projecting that they might be at that point at the end of the year. However, our tax collection revenue is more than making up for that at this time. Also like to note that engineering has exceeded their budget of revenue already at this juncture of the year. So in general, our revenues are performing about where we expect them to be right now. We do expect to have a surplus of revenue at the end of the year. I will talk about that at the end of my report.
A question about revenue.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that fire is low, lower than usual. You usually say there's a month lag. It seems now to be more like 2 months lag.
Correct, there is a lag, and I've mentioned the last couple of months that we are receiving less revenue in Medicare. As I stated, that I believe that the fire will be under budget this year, maybe not as under budget as it looks right this moment, because we will catch up some at the end of the year. But the Medicare funding is the revenue loss that we're experiencing.
So it's just the reimbursement rate?
Correct.
And I know they usually bundle their payments, so the payments are usually delayed.
Correct,
too.
that's why
Yeah.
we're usually a month
Yeah.
behind.
Okay.
So, until July, we're not quite sure what we have, but I believe, speaking with our chief, that we we will be shy on our revenue because of that. It was not anticipated at the time we put the budget together.
We're getting a lower percentage?
Yes.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
much
the rate
lower?
at which Medicare's reimbursing has gone down.
By what?
I don't know the exact numbers.
I'm not sure, but we can find out. I can find out.
Megan will find that out for us.
I will find out. I want to say it's 5% less.
Yeah, I'm not
but-
sure. The chief did not give me a percentage, just that he had been monitoring Medicare.
Well, what about Park and Rec? That's down, that's now at 50% in 75% of the year. What's the,
It was about that amount last year, but does that,
Yeah,
that picks up though as the spring comes in?
it
So
certainly,
as beach passes
certainly does.
happen.
okay,
Yeah,
so that's
There's kind of a
nothing
lag
to be
in that.
concerned about.
No,
No.
no.
That's a historical trend with that.
If spring ever comes,
I've been saying spring will come by summer.
you know?
We might
That'll be
just-
that's the same factor for golf revenue.
Yeah, right.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
It all
Yep.
affects everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to skip spring. Just going to go right to
That's what I
summer
said,
this year.
it's gonna, spring by summer.
Yeah, great. Anything else on revenue?
Nope, not from me anyway.
Okay. Expenditures.
Expenditures, I'd just like you to look at the insurance line. Yeah, the insurance line is over budget at this time. And that's because we have 3 transfers that come in at the end, towards the end of the year from the library, the transfer station, and the police department to cover the cost of insurance for those 3 facilities, so that will more than make up the amount that we are over at this time. But we bill them at the end of the year a one-time lump sum. Again, you know, we're 74% expended. We were 73 last year. The lines seem to be performing well at this point, so unless you have any other specific questions.
I have a question about general legal.
Mm-hmm.
Under legal, general legal is like 174% above budget. What is general legal? What does that cover within the legal category?
Anything that is not considered, we have a labor line, we have planning and zoning line.
This is miscellaneous legal.
Correct. I do expect that budget to be overdrawn by upwards to $60,000 at the end of the year. Again, I'll discuss all of that when I go over the year-end projections.
And Park and Rec, it's also over in expenditures,
Overall?
I believe, unless my notes are, yeah, Park and Rec is
It's
81%.
We're at 81%.
It's about-
With building maintenance at 125% above. Is there some special circumstance that's causing building maintenance to be so high?
I don't know off the top of my head unless Matt knows something. I do know that there are a number of budgets that are a little bit high at this point due to the weather. Park and Rec is one of them, the police, fire, public works. All of those budgets are affected by overtime due to the storms, so it is not unreasonable to see that those budget lines are more than 75% expended at this.
On all of
Correct.
this. Yeah.
It's all fueled by weather.
We had a couple of unforeseen, unanticipated repairs to, I believe it was the HVAC, the pump recently. So unanticipated. That building is now over 20 years old, and as a result, I think we talked about the roof. There are mechanical things that are starting to go wrong, so that caused some of those costs to rise.
Yeah, I got to a point where I was circling a lot of those 121, 125%. It was all overtime. Yeah, building maintenance, there were quite a few of them. I did actually have a question.
We do have a bunch encumbered in those line items, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Building maintenance is 33,000 encumbered. ground maintenance 33, and field maintenance 35, so. You'll note that overtime is over. Pretty good reason. Public Works is, Park and Rec is an active participant in clearing of snow in this community.
Right.
And you'll note that police, fire, Park and Rec, as well as Public Works are all in danger of being over. They are already over in their overtime accounts.
No opportunity for reimbursement?
No storms
No
rose
FEMA.
to the
No
rose to the
FEMA.
level
No
of
FEMA.
FEMA money.
We're on our own on this one.
Exactly.
On building though, under building, contracted services, I'm trying to remember what it
Under the
was.
building
but
department, that was,
Under building department contracted services, it's,
we have a significant project. I know I reported a couple months ago, I don't remember what
Yeah.
the project is, that we're receiving fees specifically for that project, which are compensating part-time assistance for that project.
okay.
Matt, do you,
Yeah,
I forget which,
our former building inspector, George Godovan, has been employed as a contractor to take care of the, there's at least 2 projects that he's working on today. One is the rehabilitation hospital that's over on the west side of town. There's a major project going there. The cost-benefit analysis shows that the fees are significantly outpacing the costs that are contracted.
Okay. So although we see that as a hit on that line, it's coming back to us.
right, if you
Yes.
look on the revenue side in the building, you'll see,
Yeah,
you'll
right.
see that coming in on the other end,
Yeah,
yeah.
did actually notice that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot which projects they
Yeah,
were.
it's all
I
right.
had that in my notes last time. but-
I was also surprised to see the Board of Assessment appeal so low. Is that because it just hasn't, I just would have thought that there would have been more expenses for this year.
Well, they're paid on a stipend. I'm not sure if their stipend
Yeah.
has been paid out yet.
Okay. I mean, it wasn't that high this time last year. It just figured with the year that we had, with the reval and everything, I thought that the expenses would have been higher, but they're not.
Right, but I believe they're paid on a stipend, not
The form
a,
of appeals may well be.
Mm-hmm.
The court cases may well be,
But not the
Phase
expenses.
1, right, Phase 1, which is the preliminary appeal.
The decisions that they made were just mailed out at the beginning of this month, so to
It might-
Mary Jane's point,
So
they
we're
may
probably
not
gonna-
have submitted their
Right.
They're
their
going to get,
statement.
Right.
that'll go.
Right, yeah.
That's what I figured. A little late on that. Anything else on the expenditures? On the expenditure sheet? Then we can move into warrants.
It can, we talk about transparency and we
Okay,
have
right.
laws and things about the publication of our budget, but I think it's really important the public know how much it costs for information to print things like our town budget, which we're required to do. I mean, $1,250 to print our budget. It mind boggles me every year. I just had to make a comment again about it.
and we print it twice.
Yeah,
Twice.
yeah.
Hopefully only twice.
And again, I think it's another example of where the state hasn't caught up with technology. There seems to me there's got to be a better, more efficient way to inform the public. Back in the day, you had the town crier and you posted it up on a wall. We've done newspapers for years. I think it's time to rethink it.
CCM has more than once tried to eliminate the mandate for that. I can't tell you how many times I've had to give them information on how much, cities and towns have spend on that, but it to no avail.
That was just going to echo Mary Jane's sentiment. CCM has lobbied year after year after year for that. Advocates for certain portions of our society continue to weigh in heavily and say there are those who do not have access to electronic means, and newspapers the only way they have to get notification. It's not only the publication of the budget, it's also
Lots of things.
a lot of other legal notices that we publish throughout the year for a variety of things that are relatively expensive. It's, but
To get on to
Warrants.
safer ground.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Page 1 of the warrant, I noticed a total of 4 items for property tax refund processed through Core Logic Real Estate. Comes up to over $22,000. You comment on that? There are like 4 pretty high tax refund items.
Well, we've had a couple of things. I'm not exactly sure on CoreLogic whether they're, the amounts are pretty high. It might not be a leasing company, but we have had a number of refunds that we've given out after January 1st for back to mortgage companies where the homeowner paid their taxes early to get their 2017 exemption, and then when we received the payment from the mortgages after January 1, we had to return those by law. So it's either one of the, it's either the mortgage company or, whenever there's a company like that, it's usually a
They're
leasing
packaging
company,
them,
but
yeah.
they're packaging them,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
So that would be my assumption at this point.
Yeah, it could be a holding company for a lot of mortgages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, mortgage of $3,863 and that could be,
Yeah, those are,
Yeah.
tax payments. Yeah, that's your tax payment right
Future
there.
tax payments.
oh, absolutely. Anything else on, now, let's see, anything else on the general warrants? Special fund?
I had a
Yeah, I
question.
just had a question on special funds. The land acquisition fund, what's left in there? What's the balance in the land acquisition?
Well,
As of
half,
tomorrow,
half of what it was yesterday.
Oh, it's a little over $1 million, right?
It was over $1 million until today.
We'll be talking about that, I guess.
Certainly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question on the payments to Pullman and Comley for the deep notice of violation.
Matt, would you like to comment on the deep violation payments?
Yes, I would. And I'd like to do it under executive session at some future point.
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, I had a question regarding that I don't think needs to be, I was just wondering if there were 2.
They are, in general, they are legal expenses related to the 3 projects, Tuttle's Point, Chaffin Fitch, and Old Quarry.
Okay.
So, but they're related?
They're related. They're,
Okay.
they're legal,
That was
they're
my
legal
question.
fees related to those projects.
Right. Okay. So Ken's question on land acquisition, how much was left? There's $10,000 on the deposit on the purchase of 52.
Right. We'll jump the shark now.
Is that something, I just wanted, do you want
Yeah.
to talk about that now?
Yeah,
Because
we
we
can talk
also
about
have a few other items to go over, so I figure while we're
At
having.
this morning's meeting, the Board of Selectmen approved the purchase of, town meeting, excuse me, approved the purchase of 52 Church Street, the building to my left, your right.
To the immediate north.
Formerly known as Dr. Small's Dental Practice and Residence, or soon to be formerly known as that. We had agreed on a purchase price. The Board of Selectmen had set a target. Land Acquisition Committee negotiated in good faith. Great credit to the Land Acquisition Committee, in particular Gary McKelney, for having negotiated that. The town meeting was held this morning prior to the Board of Selectmen's meeting, and it was approved for purchase. Closing is anticipated to be tomorrow.
would you like to comment at all on how many years this has been
Oh,
under discussion?
land acquisitions targeted this property since the early 2000s. There's been an acknowledged parking problem with this facility. It's largely attributable to the tremendous success of park and recreations programs throughout the day. With the various activities going on, it's virtually impossible to park at different times during the day. The anticipated use of that, the 52 Church Street property, is to increase parking by at least 25 to 30 spaces, which is a 30+ % uptick on what's currently available here in this parking lot. The Board of Selectmen agreed on a purchase price of about $496,000, and that was down from a tender offer that was made maybe 18 months ago by the previous administration of $590,000. So we have we've executed that agreement, or we will execute the sales agreement tomorrow. There are some questions related to how we got to that price. Yes, it is greater than the assessed value of the house, of that property. However, it's generally acknowledged in real estate that certain properties have a premium value to certain acquirers. And in this case, that piece of property has a greater value to us than it would an individual property owner, because we can significantly enhance the operations of the community center, parking, and then we also pick up another facility that can potentially be used for consolidation of other offices or expansion of other offices. You've read the articles, Zoe did a wonderful job in the article. There are several things that can be accommodated. One in particular is the food bank, which is in need of basically tearing that facility down and building something in its place. This could be a viable option for that. There's also, as you understand, there was, when social services was first put into the building next to Adams, it was always intended that that was going to be a temporary facility, because we bought that for expanded parking for Adams Middle School. So the board does not have a definitive plan for the use of the structure, but we will be moving forward. We have preliminary plans for parking in that back lot.
Yes, I brought up the town meeting call. The purchase price is $496,376. Had approximately 1.1 or so in land acquisition, so it's approximately half that has come out. I can get you a final balance after the
It's a long way around to the answer, but I appreciate it.
I circled back for you there.
Well, we could have told you there's 1.1 in it, but that might have been a little misleading.
You asked the question, so gotta come first in full circle. So. Thank you for the update.
For the long-winded answer.
Yeah. And I guess congratulations to us. I mean, it's a property that I know it's been in the works for a long time. So.
It's important.
Yeah.
It really is. Not only for this building, but for just downtown parking in general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So warrants. I was going to go on to capital projects. Thank you for the reports, the updates. It's always a lot of numbers to look at. I have a somewhat general question on the first sheet, and this is Fund 214. It's the 8.5 by 11. Obviously, a lot of these are the older bonds. And there's probably a reason that you gave this to us so that we can take maybe in some cases one last look, because I'm all about closing these things and getting rid of them.
It's been on my radar for a long time, and I'm ready to move on.
I know. So here is my question. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should know the answer, but the original revised budget, when you go all the way down and add all these up, 17 point, call it 7 million. Mm-hmm. And when you look at total expenditures as of fiscal year 16 and go all the way down, it's almost 20 million. Why are the expenditures greater than the bonded amounts?
Because we would have received some grants to help supplement the cost.
Okay. And so those grants are probably in the range of whatever it is the
Correct,
differential is.
and they were not bonded as part of an expense with the town side.
Is that noted anywhere in this, or did it's just not on here? What
It's
the amounts
probably
are
just
of
not
grants?
on here.
Okay.
It's
I know
truncated,
it-
this has been, this, if
I know it is on
the
the other-
spreadsheet's probably, you know, this
Right.
long. If you did.
That's fine, you probably collapsed it. And
Right.
the other bonded reports do have grant
Correct,
amounts. It's just not
because
on this.
those are ongoing things. So
Okay, great.
I did put Fund 214 in here for more reason than just
Okay.
for you to see it. It is my intent to ensure that in our next round of bonding, we do bond whatever is necessary to cover the last bit of these projects. As you can see at the far, it's somewhere around $800,000. I will be verifying those numbers, obviously, before we go forward with that. But once we do that, I already have bond counsel working on a resolution which will deauthorize all of these projects.
Music to my ears.
It's
know.
been something I've wanted to do
love
since
it.
I got here,
How
so.
long have I been saying this?
I know.
It was
But it
something
takes
I
time.
wanted
It
to
does.
do right
It
away,
takes-
so it's only taken a year and a half, but I'm almost there. So we hopefully, if not in this fiscal year, at least next fiscal year, that these funds will be closed out, zero, and you won't have to see them again. All the projects are complete. I have confirmed that with all the parties involved. There is a outstanding legal issue with the Adams window, the very first one where you see that we have $77 expended this year. So I have to make some sort of arrangement for that. I am working with legal on that. But other than that, as you can see, we're not, everything is complete at this point. So I would say that,
Great.
very soon we should close out this fund. One less I have to worry about in my book.
Could you explain the Guilford Lakes roof line?
In there,
342 over,
No, it's 342 under.
342 under, okay.
Yeah, it was under budget.
But complete.
Oh, yeah.
all of the projects are
that roof
complete.
got complete.
Everything
Oh, yeah.
on the report for Fund 214 are complete. I've confirmed that with Cliff at the Board of Ed, people here, spoken to everyone involved to confirm that before I went further with my plan.
Great. And then we have the other capital project reports,
Two others.
and yeah, so you have the capital and the school.
216.
I was just glancing through them, but a lot of them are still, they're still in the works, and there's shifting within the bond.
Correct.
Because some are a little bit over, some are a little bit under, so.
Yeah, and I did speak with bond counsel. All of our resolutions, when we go for authorization, give the Board of Selectmen the authority to make those shifts.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
that's common, yeah.
yep, I just needed to make sure that myself, so.
So I'm going to, does anybody have any, I'm going to stay on capital, but I was going to segue into the Long Hill
Okay.
reconstruction. When I'm looking at the capital projects, the report, we're looking under Public Works, construction of new road to connect with, reading the wrong line, reconstruction of Long Hill Road. And the revised budget of $4,608,000. I see the grant amount is exactly the same in the report that you gave, but the revised budget amount of 4,608 versus 4,466. There's a differential between the two.
Which one's,
I'm
afraid
just-
that one's.
the contract amount
Long Hill
total.
Road isn't on my iPad, so I don't know.
It's just this is the,
Thanks, sorry.
yeah, thanks, Jeff.
That's what happens when I don't bring paper.
The grant amount is correct. I mean, they're matching. I just was wondering why the contract amount is different from one to the other, and it may be just something that I'm missing
I just want to
between the two. I mean, there's still a fund balance as of 3/31 in the report of about 1.45 million. On this, there's a balance due from grants is 725. So they're slightly different reports. So I'm just trying to kind of, in my mind, reconcile them and then ultimately come down to what do we have left.
It is on here, it was just part of this, okay.
Yep.
So we have, I believe that part of the contracts for the engineering are not included in the bond funding. So
Okay.
that was one of the confusions when we were talking about total contract price. It was always different. It was because I'm projecting on the Long Hill Road all the costs associated with it, and on the fund side, it was only
I got it.
just
So this report is basically for the state. This is a state project, so these are all the numbers for this. This, you're counting everything.
Correct.
All encompassing.
Correct.
Okay. And that would make sense.
just a slight difference.
Yes, that would make sense. Okay. And ultimately, the town share we had budgeted 5 and appears to this, or 453. That's the town share.
Correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to link the two. Anything else on capital? If not, we will head to medical. The medical benefits, a little bit of a pop-up, but still...
As expected.
Still, yeah, we
As
were
I've been
expecting it.
talking about that we're going to be getting an uptick, and we're up about $100,000 March over February, and still below where our monthly projection had us at the beginning of the year. Our admin fees are just about on, and our revenue is very close, but it is that lower amount of claims that is adding to our projected surplus and bringing us up to $4.2 million anticipated at the end of the year. Catastrophic claims are at $428,000, with still another $855 yet to go. The amount that we are covered, one claim can make a difference. The end of the, as you can see, the claims do increase as time goes on. They do, as with the claims, increase at a more substantial amount, often at the second half of the year. So as we've talked other times, one year where we're high or low or have that spike does not give us a trend. So we do budget over time. So at this point, we're not seeing that as a significant change to what our catastrophic claim experience would be.
And we're a month behind on that, too.
We're always a month behind
so
on
we're
that.
not at 75%
Correct.
of the year.
Right.
We're behind.
Correct.
that.
We're not.
So.
Yeah.
Anything else on medical benefits? And then I guess I'll wrap up the town with, I'll do the building permits now. Anything on the building permits? Okay. I know we have a few more items, so I'm guessing that you will stay right here
I
as
will.
right
Okay.
after the vote here, after the...
Yep. You vote on that, and then I want to talk about something before you go on to the next item.
All right, so you're okay with me
ahead.
asking for the approval
Yes.
here? All right. Do you have a motion to approve the expenditures for the town government for April 2018 of $2,553,784?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recusals, abstentions? Mary Jane?
As promised, I have a very simplistic view of where we might be at June 30. Difficult for us to obviously get this number to be exact, but I've done an extensive review of each and every budgeted expenditure and revenue line. I anticipate that our expenditure budget at the end of the year will be overdrawn by approximately $30,000. Take into account the winter that we have had, 8 new firefighters, legal bills for various items that are going over budget. And even though I have surpluses in other line items, I do not foresee those being enough. I will note that my analysis brings the Board of Ed in at 0. At this point, I know Linda had mentioned $150,000 last year, last month, but I thought that might be slightly higher than maybe where they would come in, and it was a decision that Matt and I made to just estimate them flat.
Conservative.
Just to be sure.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make sure that the Board of Ed knew what I was doing here. So that's the expenditure side of our budget. On the revenue side, we are looking at a potential of $630,000 surplus, primarily tax collection, as we've seen each month. There are some other budgets that will be over and under, as I mentioned in my report, but overall, tax collection, I anticipate will bring in, will help us have that surplus. So when I net out the two numbers, I have an approximate $600,000 surplus at year end. The rest of my memo relates to what First Selectman has been talking about as far as where we are with fund balance, what we would need to add to our fund balance to keep us at a rate that we choose to be the right one. We've been looking at, so I've taken the numbers at 10%, which is where we ended June 30 at, and then the 9.1% is where we ended June 30, 2016. And Matt has repeatedly used that 9.1% number. So if you look at my numbers, in order to keep us at 10% at the end of 2018, we would need $134,000, which would give us $465,000 in excess of the 600. And in order to sustain the 9.1, we would need $182,000 and would give us $417,000 over the 600,000. It's just something for us to think about. We are not necessarily making any formal request at all at this point, but some of the potential transfers that we are looking at could be for future debt payments, since we are using up the amount that we have in our committed fund balance. Revaluation, if you remember, during the budget process, we took out the annual allocation to reval and are choosing to fund it at one time, so that would be a $225,000 amount that we could do that. And I'd really like to keep the table open to OPEB. We do not fund our liability for OPEB, but it's something that I would like us to consider. There are other things also on the table, but those are just the top three that we put on the memo for this. But I will keep you updated monthly as we move forward and as numbers start to get closer and easier to predict. But this is to the best of my ability at this point.
I have a question for our First Selectman. Any particular reason for the 9.1 versus the 10?
Just comfortable. That was the number we had prior to us receiving the most recent audit. Right. I'm perfectly comfortable with that number. And when we last went to the bond market, when it was at 9.1%, we were AAA rated in one, AA plus in the other. and we've gotten pretty good acceptance. What that allows us to do is with the 2017 audit and the surplus of nearly $1.2 million, if we were to keep it at 9.1, we would realize about $900,000 in, let us call it discretionary opportunities to take care of some of the things that Mary Jane just talked about. We talked about this at budget time as well, I think. So it creates an opportunity for us to take care of some one-time events. One thing that was not on Mary Jane's list, you've heard me talk about the Guilford Safe Streets Mobility Task Force, which is intended to relook at the 2002 transportation plan in light of the recent discussions in the community on the Shoreline Greenway Trail, the Nut Plains Pathway, and the 5 petitions we received for specific sidewalks. So that would be another item that I would like, I will be coming to you for consideration for funding of that, that effort to hire either a facilitator or outside consultant and possible demonstration projects to come out of that task force, the recommendations that come out of that task force. So 9.1, it's an arbitrary number, Mike, but it's one.
Yeah,
but it's one that I'm comfortable with based on the fact that we went to the market with that percentage.
Right.
Now, in order to maintain 9.1, you still need to add a little bit each year, and I think Mary Jane's got the numbers there that show how much we need to out of the budget we're currently in to stay at 9.1%.
And this is a discussion that we are fortunate to be able to have now.
Correct.
Because for the last few years, as we know, we haven't been able to have that discussion. So.
Right, and I think we're past the point. We got through the crisis period over the past 10 years or so, where we had a fund balance that was not commensurate with what it should have been. And I don't think we need to continue to grow that fund balance to any significant degree. We can quibble, we can certainly discuss it. If 10% is the magic number, okay, it's 10%. That doesn't dramatically change the numbers that we're talking about here. So if 10 is a nice round number for everybody to play with, we can certainly talk about that.
But it's good to have them in front of us. So thank you.
That's all we're showing today.
Good.
And let's remember, 10% of $1 million, nearly $100 million budget, what, $97 million? That's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines. And God forbid that we have something that we need to pay for out of that. More than likely, that's going to fall into the category of a capital expenditure and would most likely be bonded. Think of it, there aren't many things that we would buy or need to take care of for that kind of money that wouldn't fall into a bonding category.
Okay. We have a few more items to tackle here, so thank you. Item number 6, discuss and take possible action on negotiated salary transfers for fiscal year 2017-2018. You want me to just read this? And it'll be just easier if I read it, actually, for the viewing audience as well. So this is a memo to members of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance from our Finance Director, Mary Jane Malvesi. April 11, 2018, negotiated salary transfers 17-18. The Guilford Supervisors Association and Teamsters settled labor contracts. That's right. With the town of Guilford in August 2017, the Guilford Employee Association settled its labor contract with the town of Guilford in February 2018. For fiscal year 2017-18, these potential salary increases were budgeted in the reserve for personnel account. In addition, part-time employees on the classification schedule were provided corresponding increases, and the salary for the economic development coordinator was underfunded in error, which I know was very minor.
But we were making adjustments, so
Yeah,
we did everything.
now's the time to do it. The attached spreadsheet details the increase in each budget line item. I'm requesting that the Board of Selectmen approve a total transfer of $241,382 from reserve for personnel into the appropriate line items. Thank you for your consideration. We have an attached list of all the budget adjustments for employees with the GSA, Teamsters, GEA, and other part-timers. And so it is my understanding that what we are going to be doing, and Mary Jane, you might want to just back me up on this one. So the 22456 that was already in reserve for personnel will be obviously moved to these items and reallocated. And then we'll be taking 20,926 out of the fund balance that's assigned for reserve for personnel. That is actually in our audit that I needed to look for, and thankfully was given some pointers on where to find it by Mary Jane. So I could point you all to that, but it's page 45 of our audit. So there's, when we see fund balance a few different times tonight, I can tell you that's not unassigned fund balance. They're all assigned, and they're all on page 45 of our audit, which took me a little while to find, but I found it. So that's what the request is here.
Correct, the 220 is the current, in your current
It's in the current
17,
budget.
18
and
budget
20 is
line
in
item,
the
correct.
reserved amount that's assigned.
money that was set aside in
Right.
prior years.
So when you see in the three major categories, which is of adjustment, which is library, public works, and park and rec, those numbers are spread out over a number of
Oh,
employees.
correct, yes. And
It's
please
not
keep
going
in-
to one person.
Correct, absolutely. It could be a number of employees, and please keep in mind that as the GEA, we flat budgeted for 2 years. So this increase, anyone for GEA, this increase is a 2-year increase, not just a
Good.
single-year increase.
And it was budgeted.
It was budgeted in reserve for
budgeted.
personnel,
So
it just
this is
wasn't
not
in the
like 2 year
particular
that we
line
weren't
items.
expecting it.
Right.
Yep.
But even if you look at Park and Rec or some of the line items, that's not necessarily the increase they're receiving
Right.
in one fiscal year. They would have received retro pay for the prior year and then an increase for this year. But budgetarily, it's doubled.
Okay,
All right. Any further discussion?
we'll have to move the acceptance of that.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item number 7. Better take this out. I might need it later. Consider and take possible action to establish a new line item in the general fund's fund balance committed to technology and to transfer $100,000 into it from assigned to reserve for personnel. I will again read the memo. To the same people, from the same person, same date, April 11th, new reserve for technology. Currently, there is $100,000 in the general fund's fund balance assigned to reserve for personnel, which is earmarked for technology. This was done in response to the Bloom-Shapiro technology survey done a few years ago. As part of a comprehensive review of our technology needs, I would like to request that these funds be transferred to a new account in the general fund committed to technology. In this way, the funds are better restricted for this purpose. Thank you for your consideration. I would refer us to the audit, page 45 again. And
New favorite document.
it is. I'm in love with the audit now. Can I tell you? There's fund balances, and there's an assigned to fund balance, and it. When I was looking through this, I was trying to figure out where it is. It says assigned to, and then it says reserved for personnel. There's $210,000, and $100,000 of that is reserved for technology. It's just not indicated as
Right, that
for or
was-
committed to technology.
Correct. When they did the salary survey from Bloom-Shapiro a few years ago, $100,000 was placed in reserve for personnel, and they were looking at possibly some type of shared service with the Board of Education and the town. So $100,000 was put in there for some type of salary. That proposal did not go through, but we are dedicated to increasing our technology budgets and looking into this a little bit more as time goes on. So we'd like to move that money into a line item specifically for technology so that that funding does not get lost. Reserve for personnel can be used for anything, but the $100,000 is still in there for that particular purpose, so we would like to earmark it as such.
Just as a little more background, when Bloom-Shapiro made that recommendation for the potential consolidation of technology between the town and the Board of Education, unlike some contentions that have been made, not all of those recommendations, those efficiency recommendations, resulted in cost decreases. This was one that clearly had a price tag associated with it, as Bloom Shapiro had recommended the hiring of virtually a CIO-type individual to manage the respective technology assets of the town and the Board of Education. Obviously, that never went through, and at this point, we don't anticipate that happening in the near term. And anyways, it was a one-time $100,000 allocation, which would have covered perhaps 1 year's worth of salary if the market would have allowed for us to engage a CIO at that price. Clearly, it wouldn't have covered the fringe benefit piece of it as well. So we're looking, as Mary Jane said, one of the things that I have become convinced of is that we have underinvested in technology on the town side. And, having sat on that side of the table for a number of years, shame on me for not having identified that and insisted that we spend some more money on technology. You'll see there's a subsequent item on your agenda for some specific use of those funds. But this gives us a seedbed to do some things from a technology perspective that I feel and Mary Jane feels have long been overlooked and neglected. So the money is there. We think it's for an appropriate purpose and will be designated only for technology opportunities. And I would greatly appreciate your consideration in creating this new line item.
And I couldn't agree more. I couldn't have said it any better, so thank you for the backup. But yeah, I really, this is just an allocation, a commitment, of funds, making sure that they're going to the technology, not somewhere else. So that being said, do I hear a motion to let's see how to state this? A motion to establish a fund balance assigned to reserve personnel for committed to technology for the $100,000 and reallocate it to that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
One quick question.
Sure.
Technology, is that just on the town side or town Board of Ed or?
Town side.
Town side.
Because the monies that were allocated were town money.
Okay.
There was not a Board of Ed. There was not a Board of Ed contribution towards that.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, so we move right
We've been
into.
urged to do this for a number of years.
Thank you for that your consideration.
Well, now we get to use it.
That's the next point.
Number 8.
Number 8. That's right.
Discuss and take possible action to authorize expenditure for committed to technology fund for land use technology efficiency assessment as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. We have in front of us an assessment proposal from Bloom Shapiro, and this board does not necessarily need reminding, but maybe some of the viewing audience does and others, that the last 2 years, at least, maybe 3, but at least 2 years, the audit has indicated that we should take on the task of doing a fraud risk assessment. We think that fraud, we all feel fraud is a little bit tough on the wordage, but that's what it is, and this is what this particular proposal will do from Bloom Shapiro, is actually address that risk assessment issue that comes up in our audit and will continue to come up in our audit every year until we do something, whether it's Bloom Shapiro or not, because as we heard, all municipalities are really going into this, getting tagged for this particular comment of doing the fraud risk assessment. So in front of us, we have a land use technology efficiency assessment, which would address that, but that is what it is. Yeah. And Matt, if you want to maybe go into a little bit, just a little bit more detail.
Thank you for mentioning the fraud risk assessment. Actually, that would be the third component of this particular plan. This plan, in following up with my previous comments, is designed specifically to understand the technology gaps and opportunities for the deployment and use of technology in the various land use departments. You'll see on the document that land use really is sort of a misnomer because it includes tax assessor.
Page 3.
Yeah, page 3. assessor, building and engineering, environmental, natural resources, economic development, fire marshal, planning and zoning, health department, tax collector. Now, obviously, at the center of all of that is the finance office as well. But we have deployed some technology over in our various land use departments, and I'm going to refer to specifically building, health, environment, and planning and zoning primarily. I am not convinced that we are utilizing the tools that are in place. There's clearly some underutilization. There was some, I believe, there was some resistance to implementation during a couple of years ago, and this will give us an opportunity to take a look at not only the technology components, but also the operational components, how these departments relate and interact with each other. So there will be an operational efficiency layer to this, as well as the technology assessment to identify the gaps and where we need to implement and or utilize existing capabilities or add to those. And then the last piece, again, will address a component of the fraud risk assessment. It is not the entire fraud risk assessment that had been suggested in the audit letters, but it starts to get us there. Now, this morning, the Board of Selectmen waived the bidding requirements for three vendors. It is over the traditional bid threshold. The $36,000 and change price tag that's on this document typically require 3 bids. The Board of Selectmen waived it, owing to the fact that Bloom Shapiro, our long-standing auditor, will have to do less discovery work because they are intimately familiar with the various town operations and town departments. So the Board of Selectmen waived that bidding requirement and approved, authorized the first selectman to enter into a contract pending your approval this evening. And again, I would greatly appreciate your consideration of this, because this actually is the first step in moving beyond what you just approved, and this is to give us an opportunity. And then there'll be I've got another piece under new business that I want to talk to you about that will tie back into this as well. Jeff.
So this proposal is to do basically, if I understand you correctly, conduct kind of an analysis where we're doing an inventory of the systems that we have in place.
Correct.
Across the various land use offices.
Correct.
Tax collector, building, planning and zoning, building and engineering, all that type of thing. See what we have, right. See how we're using them,
correct.
And then make a determination to how we might be able to better use what we already have. Correct?
And identify areas where new technology could improve the operational efficiencies of those. Because that would be, phase 2 of this is looking at the interdependencies, the interoperability between the departments, and determine if we don't have the tools that make for the most efficient operation of these organizations as they relate to one another. They would make recommendations in terms of other technologies that we might want to consider.
And I believe part of the proposal is also just to look at the organization of our land use, right. And how they work together, how they should work, how they should work together, or how they are working together, and to make it more efficient. I think efficiency is it's right in the title. So we're looking for efficiencies not just in technology, but just in operational, organizational, and how they work together in that department. So it's got a lot of great components to it.
Now, on page 8 of this proposal from Bloom Shapiro, their fee is capped at $36,400. Is that an all-inclusive fee? Does it recur?
No, it's one time.
A one-time fee.
One-time fee.
So in terms of the management of this land assessment, it falls to the town internally to manage this.
No, once they give us their report, it will be up to us to implement the components that any of the recommendations.
It should be a complete report then.
absolutely.
The 36.4.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't going to, there's a number of items here. There's actually 8 items that we've already touched on, but
Right.
the final 2, develop findings and recommendations, management review and approval.
Right.
So once the management reviews and approves it, then we need to.
Right, but there is
start
no
acting.
recurring
Right.
cost. Bloom Shapiro will not be coming back
Right.
yearly
Right,
to
this-
do this. It's a one-time, here,
More questions?
here it is.
Excuse me, go ahead.
The timeline is 8 to 10 weeks.
Right.
Did they give you an indication of when they would begin?
They said they need a couple to 3 weeks lead time to get it running.
So it's summer work.
I'd like to, it would be my intention to execute the contract tomorrow, so that timeline starts nearly immediatly.
Yeah, May,
Yeah.
June.
Jeff, you still didn't, you look like you had
I do
a
have,
follow-up.
but no, I'll wait my turn. It's fine, it's fine.
Go ahead.
No. So efficiencies from the perspective of the town, if we can reduce either the number of people doing the same job or entering data at multiple points to accomplish the same goal, that's great. But I'm also thinking of it as efficiency from a rest of the world perspective.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And so, for example, the access that a homeowner in town or somebody who's interested in developing a site, they could be in Kansas or California, wherever,
Right.
looking at accessing the Guilford website
Right.
and gaining information about the planning and zoning process, the health. I mean, is the goal, aside from the efficiencies in that, it makes it much more efficient for somebody to come in to this town and do business here?
Yes, one of the things that we talked about in the presentation with our current vendor, Munis, who has provided us with a permitting module, which I am convinced, and I know we do not use to the extent that it should be used. There's a self-service portal that we have not deployed, which would allow you to do exactly that. Now you define the range of options somebody has within that portal, but starting your permit from your home office or your corporate office without having to come down to town hall.
Right.
Right.
That is clearly an objective.
Right, which would be an additional cost. It's something that we don't own currently at this point. So our first goal is to become efficient with what we own, so that we are working within our department efficiently, and then, on top of that, to move forward with efficiencies outside. One of the things that I would like to see is instead of handwriting permit applications and then going back in 2 days later to put it in the computer, do that as your person is at the counter. It'll start that process already. We're looking into workflows where it starts at one area, then it automatically gets deployed out by email to everybody else that has to touch it. All the way down the line, including EDC, who might have a stake in knowing the process and where things stand. So there are a lot of things that we know that we already have the capability of doing that we just want to deploy, and then we have those additional things that we would like to do that we currently don't have. But I can't wait to see the outcome. It's exciting.
I'll give you one example. As I look across, Veronica probably didn't bring hers because it's not charged, but we all have these devices, these tablet devices. Each one of our field inspectors should have a tablet that they can, while they're out in the field, could just enter in the data
That's the way the
as
industry
they.
works now.
It's the way the world
And
works.
we own that capability
We own the
now.
capability, and when you come back to the office, you just sync it up,
Right.
and it's automatically in there.
Matt and I sat through a very general overview of the entire permitting module so that we had a better idea of what it was, so that we can speak to land use about it. And there are a lot of things that we currently have the ability to do that we can easily deploy.
And the way we look at it, we're giving our employees tools to be more efficient, provide better customer service, and if it results in decreased cost, wonderful. but being more efficient and being able to do more with the resources that we have here today and providing exceptional customer service, that alone is motivation for me.
You heard from Bloom Shapiro as to the trend in other towns that they serve. Are they also going for this?
No, this one was somewhat unique. They do studies like this. They do technology assessments throughout their client base. This one was a little bit different because we tried to blend three components together.
Okay.
And I might add that we didn't do this by ourselves. The erstwhile chairman of your board was part of the original discussions with Bloom Shapiro when we laid out what we were looking for. And then we also had the opportunity as a team to review this proposal and recommendation to ensure that it captured what we were looking for. So Mike was part of that process. We're not doing this in a silo. And it usually only happened to Joe Mazza, but now it happens to Matt Hoy too.
So we're not gonna vote. Yeah, we're gonna keep everyone suspense on what happens. So we'll go to the next tape. Thanks, Mike.